It's scary to build your brand, to put yourself out there online. We've all had the experience where we've posted something in a comment section and someone who's miserable and unhappy in their life decides that they're going to go to town on you. So I think we all have a hesitation around that.
So you've built nearly $500,000 a year in a pipeline from that specifically with no ads, no agents, just consistency.
But what I didn't realize was it takes more than someone seeing you one time. And once I started to get over the fact that nobody really cares, nobody's going to see it the first time. It's about staying in front of people and providing value. So what I started to try to do is turn everything into a little bit more of a story, make it a little bit more interesting, and try to find ways that will connect with people more than just seeing that you're doing well. I try to post some stuff that's really just kind of get to know me, because generally people reach out to you if there's trust and they like you and they want to work with you.
So aside from posting, what is the best thing that you can do on LinkedIn to grow?
We all get the same 24 hours. So why is it that some people build so much more with them? I'm Brian Coons, and this is the Builder Nation podcast, where we talk to top performers, entrepreneurs, and visionaries to uncover the architecture of a meaningful and fulfilling life. Let's get into it.
Welcome to a new episode of the Builder Nation podcast, where we sit down with entrepreneurs leveraging to build and live more in the same 24 hours as everyone else. So today we got my boy, Dillon Freeman. He's one of the top mortgage lenders in the country, earning over $400,000 a year through systems he's built entirely from LinkedIn. So he's mastered the art of organic client generation, discipline, and consistency, all in that space, while being a devoted husband and father and a leader who shows what balance looks like. I know I see you at the gym all the time, dude.
When I can get out there.
When you can get out there. Exactly.
Otherwise, I'm in the garage layer, which you also visited.
Which gets the job done exactly well.
Yeah.
So tell me, LinkedIn has over 1 billion users, but less than 1% actually post. And meanwhile, 80% of online B2B leads come from that platform. So you've built nearly $500,000 a year in a pipeline from that specifically with no ads, no agents, just consistency. So why do you think more people are not doing this?
It's scary to build your brand, to put yourself out there online. We've all had the experience where we've posted something in a comment section and someone who's miserable and unhappy in their life decides that they're going to go to town on you. So I think we all have a hesitation around that. I'm sure you have friends that tease you about your content and the stuff you're doing online. So I think the biggest resistance that most people have is just the psychological resistance to exposing themselves to criticism or whatever else. And, we were talking about it before we hit record here, but I think the big thing with LinkedIn is that people are starting to use it for business generation the same way that they were with Instagram maybe 5 or 8 years ago. So a little bit of a long-winded answer here, but one of the big things that got me started was Gary Vee in like maybe 2021 or 2022 was talking about how LinkedIn is going to be the next Instagram. I'd already been really consistent about making sure that everyone I'd worked with in my corporate career, that I was adding them and growing that network. So when I branched out into this side of the business, it was kind of a no cost way for me to at least try a new way to generate business.
What got you over the hurdle of that mentality to be okay with people judging you if that was the case?
So I started more with commentary on the market. So I'm a chartered financial analyst, which is kind of the equivalent of a graduate degree in like economics and finance. And I felt that I had interesting perspectives to share. So that's really where it started. It started as kind of an infotainment, information sharing kind of thing. And when I really started posting was during about 2.5 years ago, the banking crisis where First Republic and Silicon Valley collapsed. I was commenting on the structure of these companies and why it's so easy for, Peter Thiel and a couple people to send some tweets to send these banks into kind of a spiral. So I was just kind of live tweeting on LinkedIn, the stuff that was unfolding and sort of the context behind it and how it really works. And I got some positive feedback from people, and that positive feedback was enough for me to say, okay, people are somewhat interested in what I have to say.
Right.
And then that was before I was laid off from banking. And once I was laid off, I transitioned into this direct lender role where I didn't have any mortgage brokers that I'd worked with. I didn't have any borrowers that I'd worked with direct, but I had a few thousand people on LinkedIn that I knew were affiliated with the space. And I figured, why not continue this and try to build it in a way that I can start to get business from it.
Okay. And so when you started posting, it sounds like you found a way to not necessarily claim you were the expert, but just make commentary on other people's expertise.
Yeah, it's the same way that you'll see some people will just share an article and post the body of the article and a link on LinkedIn. But what I always wanted to do was to read between the lines or provide some other sort of nugget or connect the dots somehow to provide value other than just kind of a copy paste.
How has your tactics grown from the beginning of starting on LinkedIn to what you see now working?
It's a great question. As I talked about, I didn't really have anything to share. I didn't have any success stories. I didn't have anything that was like, look what I'm doing out here. So it was very, very information based. I stuck to that for a while, maybe too long, and sort of leaned on it as a crutch, right? So it was me sort of just trying to grow my presence and be someone that people wanted to see what they had to say. And then I'll never forget the first marketing post that I shared. And I think I may have shared this with you, where I said, hey, my name's Dillon. I'm a lender. I do bridge loans. I can also broker perm loans and all kinds of other stuff. And not a single person responded.
Really?
And I was in my feels about that, because to me, I thought that it was kind of obvious that that there's a need out there. But what I didn't realize was it takes more than someone seeing you one time. And once I started to get over the fact that nobody really cares, nobody's going to see it the first time, it's about staying in front of people and providing value, I started to change from just informational stuff to making sure that I'm sending marketing stuff, putting out the programs that we're working on and what's working. And then as I started to find success, sharing those success stories. And what a lot of people lean on is they just post, all they do is post just closed and a picture. And that's cool, but it's not, maybe some people will throw some likes out there because they're happy for you, but it's not
a story.
Very valuable to people. So what I started to try to do is turn everything into a little bit more of a story, make it a little bit more interesting, and try to find ways that will connect with people more than just seeing that you're doing well, right? Because that's kind of what a just closed post is.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we just got C of O.
Right.
But it's a lot cooler if you say, hey, we got C of O and we had to kick a homeless guy out and there was a fire and SDG&E took 3 extra months or whatever. So layering on, story kind of stuff, I think has been really effective. And then also continuing to share what's working, commentary on the market, and be a source of value, but also use it for marketing. And then also I try to post some stuff that's really just kind of get to know me, because generally people reach out to you if there's trust and they like you and they want to work with you. So as corny as it is sometimes to just put yourself out there and say, hey, this is me and my kid and I love being a dad, it just makes people like you a little bit more. So I try to sprinkle in that. We can talk a little bit more about kind of the pillars that I think about.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because the way you're making it sound, Instagram is super, highlight reel. It's kind of how it started. It's very highlight reel, where it almost sounds like LinkedIn is much more the authenticity, like, that people are craving of, like, here's the learning lesson. This is something that I'm like learning, and, like, kind of tell me your thoughts on it. But like, the way that LinkedIn differs is it's not a highlight reel. It's a storybook.
Mm-hmm.
And like, is that kind of what you see?
Yeah. I think so. And Instagram tends to lend itself to a little bit more of look at me, and LinkedIn tends to lend itself to professionals, and professionals want value. They don't want to see you. A lot of people are still posting stuff in front of a Lamborghini and being like, you can be a real estate syndicator. And most professionals don't want to see that, right? They have enough money to buy a Ferrari and they think it's stupid, or they aren't at that level and they're kind of jealous and they're like, why is this guy
they're
throwing
like,
this in my
why?
face?
Yeah,
Right?
they're like, why are you spending the money that I'm giving you on a car? Like, worry about the project. In terms of, aside from posting on LinkedIn, what is the best thing that you can do on LinkedIn to grow?
So I have a few things that I do on LinkedIn very regularly to grow. One of them is interacting with others' content, both people that you just like and know well, and also people that have a larger following. So one of the things that's unique about LinkedIn over other platforms is it will show you if people that you're connected with are liking and commenting on others' content. And so it's another way to see your name pop up on a prospect's feed or someone you know's feed. And then it's also another way to cross-pollinate with someone else's network, because someone may see a post from someone that they follow. And if you put something insightful there, maybe they'll follow you. Maybe they'll reach out to you and say, hey, I saw you posted about small multifamily loans in San Diego. I have a project that I'm working on. I have some questions for you. So that's a good one. And then also for me in growing my network, making sure to position my profile for people to follow. And I also will go through, if someone has a really high traction post, I'll go through and basically add people that are in the real estate community. And the reason why I connect with them and not just follow is because if you connect, people will see what you're posting. If you just follow someone, you'll only see what they're posting. And so I kind of throw them out there a little bit willy-nilly. I don't tend to actually maximize, because they'll cap you monthly or weekly on the amount of invites, but I try to keep it relatively real estate. But before, where I've seen the most growth is not just adding brokers and mortgage brokers and investors, but adding people that are ancillary parts of the real estate industry because they may have a need or their parent may have a need. I just closed a loan with a guy who runs a pretty impressive several $100 million fund. He's a co-founder there. And he had a loan that he needed for his dad, and he had seen my stuff online and reached out to me, and we did that loan. So it's not just about the one prospect. It's just kind of about being out there, and it's less invasive than an email marketing campaign.
Right. Well, it's interesting too, because when you go to adjacent markets for finding leads, more so than your specific market, it probably feels less like selling because you're going to them and saying, hey, here's this thing. Here's how can I help you add value to your clients and help you win? Not, hey, I have this thing, like use me for your loan.
Right. So the other thing that I put on my profile is a call scheduling link, which sometimes leads to absolute chaos in my schedule in my daily life, but also leads to a lot of great conversations. I'll have someone that I talked to someone yesterday. They manage several thousand units as a property manager, and he wants to syndicate his first deal. He obviously has the experience to be able to do it, but he wanted to know what the landscape is for the financing, what kind of leverage he can expect, what the terms are like, so that he can go back and model deals and figure out what's a deal for him. So it's not just someone reaching out, hey, I saw your post on DSCR loans, which is what I do the most of. I have a DSCR loan. It's more providing value and just being out there, and things will, as you said, organically just kind of start to happen.
Right. No, it makes a lot of sense. So in terms of like deciding what content to post, how do you balance that? And how do you kind of get that content out? Because you've been doing content for, every day for like multiple years now. So how do you post so consistently and post quality content?
I sometimes get writer's block, idea constipation, if you will, but I have a few sort of pillars of ideas of content that help me. So I have a notes app in my phone where I write down an idea that strikes inspiration that I think can be an interesting post. Sometimes I'll use ChatGPT to kind of workshop the idea or connect the dots if I'm having a little bit of trouble thinking through it. I'm a very avid reader of industry news. So I send myself articles that I read in newsletters or from posts or other stuff, and I save them in a folder for inspiration later on when I say, hey, I need a few more posts this week. I can draw upon that. And then I think about the pillars, number one, where I started, where I'll always be, is infotainment, providing value through information where there's no sale. There's not even a call to action. It's just like, hey, I have interesting stuff to share with you. And I think that breeds the subject matter expert, the social proof kind of thing. There's also, obviously, I need to post marketing stuff about what we're doing and how I can help, because LinkedIn posts have a very short life. So you have to constantly be putting stuff out there. I tend to stop seeing likes on posts within about a week. So people are only really seeing stuff for about a week. So you're always on that treadmill. And then other stuff, just kind of as it comes up, if I'm feeling like posting about being a dad or something happened to inspire a post about that, as we talked about, just making me a little bit more of a person than just a salesperson, I think. So between those, 3-4 pillars, that's enough to go with. And then I've also had over the years a couple different segments that I'll run weekly. One that ruffled some feathers was Trouble Asset Tuesday. So I was posting about multifamily deals in San Diego that, at current debt terms and at sort of market rents and expenses, my analysis was saying, hey, this person's going to have to sell because they can't refinance. And that got a lot of traction. That got some negative feedback, but I think overall people were entertained by it and like it. I was at an apartment event yesterday, and several brokers were like, hey man, you should really bring that back. That was fun. And lately I've been doing a Saturday school thing. So it's purely informational. It's something that I find interesting that I want to share with people that they may or may not know. And again, I try to add a little bit of something to it. So I've talked about like cognitive biases. I've talked about how interest rates really work. I've talked about the Federal Reserve, a bunch of this other stuff. So whatever kind of speaks to me in the moment. I think this week we've seen some distress in the banking market. So I might bring back an old post that I had posted on about how banks recognize losses on their portfolio. So that's the other thing too, is sometimes I will bring back good performing content. And that was actually a Rich Somers thing, is he was saying, you can bring back good performing content because it does have a
if
short
it's still
life.
relevant.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Hey guys, if you're a business owner, high income earner, or investor who's been thinking about getting into real estate development but don't have the time to manage the process, this is for you. My company partners with people like you to help unlock the potential of your properties or even source and manage new small scale development projects. We manage hundreds of ADUs and infill development projects across Southern California, and our team knows how to simplify the process so you can benefit from the upside without managing contractors, permits, or design headaches. Whether you want to develop your own property, explore ways to offset taxes, or just learn how the development model works, head to thebuildernation.com/partner. That's thebuildernation.com/partner, and see how we can help you build more with the same 24 hours. Now back to the show.
I'm curious, like, when you're posting so regularly, I'm curious what the negative feedback was from it. Like, how it was the actual, like, investors themselves that said, hey, stop posting about my project?
Yeah. So I always kept it relatively anonymous, right? I would say it's in San Diego, or I might even say a neighborhood. I would say when it was purchased and how much debt they had on it. Nobody's name was ever used, and I intentionally did it. And probably the worst one was a guy that, basically said that I'm, trying to harm his business by posting about his project, and his project is totally fine. But my favorite part about that whole saga is a couple months later, he did a cash in refi. So the debt that he had was too much to carry on the property. Fortunately for this guy's situation, he was able to go to his LPs or his investors and bring in more cash to stabilize the deal. But that was sort of ironic because he made my point.
That's funny. I remember I posted one on Instagram that was me roasting a wholesaler deal, and that person reached out to me and was like, hey, I had like 4 or 5 people like reach out to me and send this, can you take it down? And I had a very like real like heart to heart with myself of like, do I take this down, or do I stick with my opinion and say like, hey, like I didn't share your name, I didn't share whatever, and it's also accurate. If it wasn't accurate, that'd be one thing, but it sounds like you were accurate with it, which is funny.
So I did have one post ever that I took down, and in hindsight, like maybe it wasn't in the best taste, but it was the skit from one of Shane Gillis's shows. I don't know if you've seen the one where the cop wakes up and he's sleepwalking, and the friends are at a dinner party, and he goes to bed because he's got night shift or whatever weird kind of thing, and he gets up and he's sleepwalking, and he starts pointing the gun at everyone, and everyone's freaking out, and then he puts the gun in his mouth, and I said, this is Trump's tariff policy right now, because it was like, you can't hurt me, I'll hurt me kind of thing. And man, guns and people really get kind of fired up about it. So I had a couple people saying this is distasteful, and I was like, well, you're kind of missing the point. The point is about being belligerent. It's not about suicide or anything. Right. And then I had a few people email the company and said, hey, I find this in very poor taste. So
wow.
Our COO was like, hey, listen, I get your point, but you should probably take it down. And I said, all right, fair enough point. Like, yeah. It doesn't bother me.
I mean, the fact that people were so ruffled that they actually were reaching out to your company means that you're doing something right. Because I mean, the whole point, like I've learned from now, or I've learned from a couple people now, people like controversy. Mm-hmm. They may not, it's like a abusive relationship. It's like, you may like it, or you may not say you don't like it, but it's like you're still there kind of thing. And it's like, so it's like, oh, don't look. But they'll still, they want to hear your thought on it.
Yeah, and I did have a lot more of a negative slant to my content early on, talking about what was going on in the market, and a lot of those problems are still around. I have found that being more positive generally leads to more positive interactions. It's easy to see that something you put out there gets a lot of views or likes or impressions or whatever, and you think to yourself, okay, I've hit something, I should really lean into this. And I think we've both seen people do that and take it a little bit too far. So I do try to be mindful of that. Like, I think a couple months ago, I was like, wow, I've really posted some more negative leaning stuff. So why don't I be more positive and talk about, building relationships in the industry or something to kind of bring it back around.
Whereas after you watch like a scary movie, you'll watch a puppy exactly. Video just to lose
take the edge off.
Exactly. So being somebody who's making so much money from the actual leads that are coming in, but also having to post and also doing these things with your kids, how do you structure your day appropriately to do so much?
So generally, family time is above all else. So I will get up early in order to get a couple hours of work done before my kids get up. I spend time with them in the morning, get them ready. Generally, I am the one that takes our son to daycare. I come back, I get my workout in. Our daily pipeline call starts at 9:15. So that's when my regular day starts. But in the early portion is where I get more of the focused work done. I'll write content. I'll send out deal quotes on active listings in the market. It's stuff that is easier for me to get done without being interrupted, without getting calls. Like my phone is vibrating off the hook right now in my pocket. And then work through the day. That's another thing, is I cut off the hours that my Calendly link allows people to book meetings. So I can at least have a couple hours later in the day where I don't have a bunch of stuff booked up, where I can book other sorts of stuff. And then 5 to 7 is non-negotiable. 5 to 7, 7:30 is non-negotiable family time. So if someone calls me generally in that time, unless it's a borrower that I'm working with on a current deal that I know that I can just answer in 5 minutes, generally it's like phone is not accessible during that time, and I can get to you later. And usually these things are not emergencies. It's the tyranny of the urgent, right? It's like you think it's urgent, but is it urgent and important? And is it more important than the other thing that you're doing right now? But it is very difficult to manage. And I could be better at it for sure.
Yeah, I think everyone can be better at it, but I like that. I mean, so like those sound like some of your non-negotiables. So, the family, the gym, I'm assuming is another one that's like you'll hit every day. And then I like too that like, so some of the systems you're putting in place is like protecting your Calendly link, which is very important, which I think a lot of people, if you don't have Calendly, like, what are you doing? Because there's literally like, it's so easy to have this link for like, think about your day, right? All the 5-10 things, basically all your meetings that anyone would have. It's a quick call. It's a client conversation. It's a, meeting to like with a potential investor, whatever. And, make those Calendly links and then you just shoot them out. And it's like, all right, whenever they book, they book. Like,
yeah. And even with existing context, I have it in my email signature with my work email because someone says, hey, let's do this. I say, hey, Thursday looks pretty good. Go ahead and use this link. And that alone probably saves me at least an hour a week of like going back and forth with people because I'll book, anywhere from 10 to 20 meetings a week. And that's a lot of time to spend going back and forth, who's free when. And I know that some people are a little taken aback by it. So I try to soften it. I say, hey, let me know when you're free, or if it's easier, go ahead and use this link. And 9 times out of 10, they use the link. And I've never had someone complain and say, oh, I can't believe you wouldn't do hand-to-hand combat so we could figure out when we could get on the phone, right? Like it's not that big.
Well, it's more efficient for them too. What other tools and automations do you have set up in your business?
I wish I had more. So I've built myself some sizers. I've built myself.
What are sizers?
So like a loan sizer.
Okay.
So it's just a calculator to help determine loan terms. I've used an apartment expense operating guide that's published by a local appraiser that I use to run pro formas on multifamily properties. And that probably alone per deal saves me an hour or two. And it's not terribly accurate, but it's about as accurate as a first year analyst, which I've had experience managing in the past. So I'm okay with that. I did take a shot at vibe coding I forget what Python code to go to Redfin and pull multi-unit listings and pull down the data, which then I was going to feed into a spreadsheet and put into my sizer. But I'm not a programmer, as it turns out. It was more challenging. The data was a little bit more messy, but there's some other things I'm working on. Those are really the big ones. And to me, the most important part of my day is connecting with people and building relationships because that's what's going to bring the deal home. So anything that is not that, I need to try and offload. So right now I'm actually looking at bringing on an analyst because I need them to do a little bit of the air traffic control. I need them to be able to plug into my AI model to put deals together and prep them to send out to lenders, to send to our loan committee, because that is very valuable, but that is something that someone else can do pretty well that doesn't require my input.
So it seems like you're at a stage where you're right at that point where you're about maxed out on your own time. So, and as you scale, what are some of the first and last things that you're going to offload?
So definitely last things is calls and relationship building and stuff like that. I think task-oriented stuff is what I plan to offload. So in putting together this job description for an analyst, my team had my CEO and COO, we have a monthly check-in where we kind of talk about strategy and KPIs and all that kind of stuff. And they had me sit down and say, hey, list every single thing that you do in a week and list what you think you should keep. And then for the things that you don't keep, figure out if it's something that a VA can do, or if it's something that you should have an analyst do, or if it's something you can offload to someone else.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I feel like a lot of people don't know where to start with it. And they just say, oh, I can't take anything off my plate. And there's so many minuscule tasks that you can train I don't want to say a monkey, but you can train somebody to do very easily, or set up, things, automations or tools that you can use to decrease that time frame. So what's your goal in terms of growth? Like, what's the next step? Obviously, being somebody who creates a pretty significant amount of income from the personal brand and the lending.
We talked a little bit about this. Goal for me is to start buying real estate, get real estate professional status, be able to offset passive losses against active income. So that will be a large step to me, because right now my largest expense in my life is taxes. So if I can start to eliminate taxes, I can keep more of my money, grow my portfolio over time. The goal is to not be someone who has to work in their 50s and 60s, right? And I think if I can continue to scale at the run rate I'm at to double this year's numbers would be a really awesome goal, but I'm not going to do that unless I build more systems. And it's funny, I sat down and did kind of a goal setting meeting with we both know Trent Katie.
Yep.
And it's funny that I wrote down all this stuff about building systems, and then I kind of didn't really do as much of it as I needed to. And that was before I was really feeling the pain of needing systems. And now that I'm very acutely feeling the pain, I wish I had done more of that working on the business stuff earlier this year. So next year we'll definitely do it.
That makes sense. How do you think your goals have changed since becoming a dad?
None of this stuff matters anything remotely as much as being a dad. It's just the feeling when I go to pick up my son from school and he yells daddy and runs over and gives me a hug is way better than any loan closing or any direct deposit that I'll ever get in my life. I think also not necessarily goals, but just in terms of, how it's affected me personally is because that matters so much. The ego involved in the way that others perceive you and stuff like that is just totally dissolved. Like other people's perception of me is so far below how my kids see me and how they see me show up and my relationship with them. So it's really just that becomes number one immediately.
I've seen you have your kid in the gym, in your home gym with you. How do you involve your kid in your life?
So he's 2.5. So before, like, you can't really tell him to do things. You can kind of try to do stuff with him. Like teaching him to swing a baseball bat has been a serious battle, and throw. The kid throws like very pitifully, but we're getting there. But now he's at the age where he understands more and he wants to be helpful. So when we're doing stuff with him, we try to give him a little task. Like if I'm doing something with his brother, I'll say, hey, can you go to the other room and get brother's pacifier? Or if I'm doing something in the gym, I'm doing squats with a barbell, I'll give him a little like stick or something so that he can pretend to squat too. And so he wants to be involved and he wants to be helpful. So we try to lean into that because that you should see the look on his face. He's so proud when he brings his brother a pacifier. He's just like,
he did it.
Yeah.
He asked. That's honestly, bro, that's one of the most important things. I think, like, obviously I don't have any kids, but from what I see, the successful parents, they just live by example and they just involve the child in it. They just watch it's like, you're helping him, you're teaching him to like, oh, it's fun to like squat, not sit on a couch and watch TV all night.
Other things that we've done is I cook most of my meals, but it's become much more utilitarian than it used to, right? So generally I would put together, multiple things as part of a meal. And now it's a lot more like, what can I, get what I need out of my meals without inputting too much time.
So you're saying, so you're literally like systemizing like your meals to make them simpler and more efficient.
Yeah, always cook in bulk. There's never a one sitting meal except breakfast, because I have to be there with my son while he eats breakfast every day. So I can take 5 minutes and make some eggs. Like that's not a big deal.
I love that. That's like, that's a big thing. So how do you separate the work from family time?
It's really hard. I'm not always good at it. My wife is very patient and understanding. Fortunately, she's also in a sales role, so she understands the demands of being in sales and being there for people. But she does a good job of kind of reeling me back in. If she's like, hey, it's between 5 and 7 and you kind of been on your phone, I'm like, you know what, you're right. And that's really hard sometimes. Sometimes you immediately go to defensive mode and you're like, well, but it's this other thing is important. And then you like realize while you're saying it, like, no, this isn't as important. I can answer this email when the kids go to bed, whatever. But it's challenging. It's the tyranny of the urgent. Everything feels urgent and important, and you have to recalibrate.
Have you ever had any like failures that you've let slip in to the family life, and how do you manage to keep the tough times separate?
I think it's really hard to do. My biggest thing is not being present even when I'm physically present. Like I'm totally open to understanding that I do that. And that I'm consciously working on it. And sometimes I'm better and sometimes I'm worse, for sure. I think the wake up call for me was, I was frustrated about something with work and my son was like demanding of me. And I kind of like was like, not right now, sort of snapped at him. And he gave me this like really sad, disappointed look on his face. And I was like, what kind of shitty monster am I to have just taken out my stress on my 2-year-old? So that was a big moment for me. And I think since then I've been a lot better about finding myself in that situation, or if I do find myself in that situation, decoupling the work brain stress from the family moment sort of thing.
It's hard, man. Like there's no one, I've never seen anyone who's like perfect at that. You're always going to have a bleed from each. But yeah, I think that, knowing more and more that like they're absolutely the ones that are on your team just makes it easier.
Yeah. And the thing is I work remote, right? And I used to commute from La Mesa to UTC, which is, 30 to 45 minutes to an hour each way every day. So it's really meaningful to me to be able to drop my son off at daycare, to be there when he comes home from daycare, and to be present. Because if I had just a normal job, I'd probably leave the house at 7:30 and I'd probably get home at 6:30 or 7, and I would get like 30 minutes on each side of that with my kids every day. And so I really try to value the fact that I am most days able to preserve that time for them.
I love that. So before we finish up, I want to get a little bit more, obviously, with you being honestly one of the probably most relevant thought leaders in the mortgage industry for LinkedIn. Where do you see the mortgage industry going over the next 2 years?
There's a lot of people that are pointing to automation, removing the need for the role. And I just don't see that happening. It's such an emotional thing. There are so many small negotiations that go into the process that you can automate the tasks, but I don't think you can automate the relationship, right? Like, you can send people to a portal, but then they may not complete the file because they get frustrated or they don't know what to do or something like that. So I think that there will never be a complete elimination of that human element. Especially in bridge lending, every loan is kind of a story, right? You can't have someone just input a form online and then be able to do the deal. Like, there's always, and that's why even the more tech-enabled lenders, they'll have a portal and they'll have all the information that you put in, but there's a relationship manager there or a loan officer that has to shepherd the file through. And there's always going to be fires to put out. So I think, maybe there will need to be less loan officers. There's already been a pretty large decrease in the number of loan officers since the whole mortgage boom happened in, 2020 to 2022. So I think maybe that continues a little bit, but I don't think it's this thing where it's going to be completely eliminated like other administrative roles. I do think, and maybe this wasn't the question you're asking, but I do think that in terms of like where interest rates are at, if you take a long-term view and you zoom out on the treasury market, rates are like kind of on the lower end of where they've been historically. And unless there's some sort of major calamity, I don't see rates going super low again. And those that are wishing for that forget how scary it is when rates are going down, because the economy is shedding jobs and is shrinking. And, there's vacancies on properties and all these other things that play into that, right? So they're like, hey, 3% would be really nice, but do you really want all the other stuff that comes with it?
As a lender, what makes a shitty borrower?
Someone who doesn't know what they want, someone with unrealistic expectations. I do firmly believe that people should shop. I think that it would be unwise to go with one person, but it is really challenging when there's other people in the market that are overpromising. So I think, I had a guy that called me recently, and they had an 8-unit build in LA, and it was completed, and they'd extended their loan and capitalized interest a couple of times. They had this perception of what value was, and their value was based on like a 15% operating expense ratio, right? And so I did a real underwrite of their P&L, and I said, hey, your expense ratio is going to be closer to 20 to 30% as a bank underwrites it, even though you have, low maintenance plants and this and that and the other thing. And I said, interest rates on this kind of product are around 6%. Your debt yield on that, which is your NOI over your loan amount, is going to be in the 8-9% range. But that 8-9% is 85% of your gross income. And it's just, you don't have hope. And his response was, well, maybe you're not the right guy for the job. So I don't think it was I'm not the right guy for the job. I think it was an expectation issue. So a lot of people are used to hearing that you can get into multifamily for 20, 25% down, which may work when rates are super low, but it's based on the math of the income of the property, right? It's not just based on this loan to value, which banks may still be willing to lend that. However, the cash flow makes it so they're unable to, right? Because they're looking at a debt cover.
So why would somebody want to do multifamily rather than like single family or small multifamily?
I think the biggest thing is the leverage, right? If you have a 5 cap property, every dollar of income is $20 of value. So if you can get into a property at a good basis, which a lot of people don't, there's a ton of properties listed in San Diego. The average San Diego sales price is right around $400,000 per unit. And I'll see a broker that posts a property that's, $430,000 per unit, and they'll say upside potential, value add deal. And you may be able to get the cash flow up, but buying at that basis, there's not a lot of upside in the actual value. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think the big thing is that you're leveraging the cash flow for value. And in single family, it's more about the demand from individuals. And that's why in San Diego, for instance, the cost of renting the same home versus the cost of buying the same home is so drastically different, right? So you can rent a house that you would have a $7,000 payment on for $3,500 a month. And so your debt on that is going to be much, much lower, and you're going to get a much lower return on your equity in the deal than you would if you go to a multifamily, which right now with negative leverage, it's not that attractive right now. If you buy at a 5 cap in San Diego with a 6% interest rate, your cash on cash return is like less than 3%, and money markets are 4%. So I think that's why they've slowed down. But you're really betting on, in a market like this, you're betting on the appreciation, right? And to me, I have a lot of people ask me, why don't you do out-of-state investing? The returns are so much better. It's like, well, the cash flow return is better, but the value return isn't better. So I would rather be somewhere that I can go take care of the property, manage it myself, not have to worry about finding a property manager in some other remote market. But that's a preference thing.
Mm-hmm. And what's the best way for somebody to stay ahead of the changing interest rate environment to make sure that they are investing in the right assets?
That's hard. So if you look at when the Fed meets every quarter, they release their projection of where interest rates are going to go. And if you look over the past couple of years, they've had it completely wrong. And generally, forward-looking estimates of interest rates are wrong, even if you look at forward curves. So I think it's just understanding the plumbing of how the market works and the things that are driving what's occurring in the market. But you can't plan for a COVID. You probably could have planned for rates going back up after COVID if you had a little bit more forethought about it. So I think it's just being knowledgeable, consuming information, staying on top of trends and news. And that's not just, hey, Bobby made $8 trillion on this property. You can do it too. It's more understanding the actual math behind it. And I think you do a pretty good job of sharing that with people as well.
So to close out, I have one more question for you. When your son's old enough to understand what you do, what lesson do you hope he learns for how you've worked?
That's a great question. So I grew up, my dad was an electrician, and then he, from a work accident, was able to retrain and go into IT. And even when he was in IT, he would do like side jobs still as an electrician. And so he really taught me about what it means to work hard and care about providing with your family, for your family. And what I would like to teach him is to put himself in a situation where he's not necessarily trading time for money, because that's my goal as well, right? Like I am working to earn money. However, it's not tied to the number of hours of work. It's tied on the result. And so that's something that I really want to teach him is out there. And if he wants to be someone that just wants to punch a clock, as long as he's happy with that and satisfied with that, that's okay too. But I do want him to understand that the possibility is out there, that if you're willing to risk it and you're willing to put yourself out there and work really hard, that you don't have to put a dollar number per hour on your time and only be able to earn that.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole purpose of this podcast, is to teach people how to take time and leverage it more efficiently to do more. And I think you can get paid $1,000 an hour, but you're still trading your time for money.
Yeah.
So doing what you're doing, growing on LinkedIn, building systems and automations, there's no cap on it. It's just a matter of how effective you can be. So
yeah, that's well said.
Dude, I love it, man. This has been amazing for like all the game on LinkedIn. Like I know I am specifically taking things that you're talking about and implementing it as we speak, and more to come. So thanks for coming on, man. And we will see you guys in the next episode. Mr. Dillon, the LinkedIn Master Freeman. Appreciate it,
man.
That's it for this episode of the Build a Nation podcast. If it gave you something to think about, hit subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's leveling up. Until next time, keep building.